This year, Duke Athletics celebrates the 50th anniversary of women's sports at Duke University, as well as the upcoming 50th anniversary of the passage of Title IX. Title IX is so important because it's created meaningful opportunities for girls and women to participate in sports. It gives them an opportunity to aspire to do something great, to realize their full potential, be active, participating members of society, and in sport, what a great vehicle for young women and girls to do that.
It's been profoundly impactful. It's changed, if not dramatically modified life, not only in our country, but globally. A massive impact. And I don't think anybody really quite frankly understood what the potential impact might have been. The societal influences things had on all aspects of society, both race and gender, in my opinion, has been, again, extraordinary.
It's been important to me when I came to Duke to know that our student athletes as softball players were going to be surrounded by excellence with all of the great female sports and women that are around, from golf to women's lacrosse and field hockey. I think that you become a product of those you spend time with. And so our student athletes being surrounded by excellence, they want to be in the postseason and win championships just like everybody else. It's been great to see how invested Duke Athletics is in their female sports and women in general, and continue to elevate people in leadership roles.
Over the 41 years that I've been here, I have seen great changes. We have state-of-the-art facilities, best coaches in the country, and Title IX enabled our students, our women's students, to be able to play. 50 years overall, opportunity for young women and young girls interscholastically and intercollegiately to participate in sport that they would have never had that opportunity before.
So for 50 years, we've had women's athletics at Duke, and it's just been a really exciting time to see the growth of women's sports and the emphasis we've placed on progress.
Sport is pop culture in our country, and there's an insatiable interest in sport. And there was, for a long time, for the last century, it was largely on the men's side. And now I think the real growth potential, quite frankly, is the unencumbered market space on the women's side. I think the next 50 years are going to be really exciting for women in sport in this country and also globally.
When student athletes come to Duke, they are coming to receive a world-class experience, both in the classroom and athletically. We're competing at high levels. We're competing for high GPAs, great grades, graduation rates, but then also the athletic experience. And our student athletes, we're preparing them to go out into the world, to do good in the world, to be the leaders of tomorrow.
Who wouldn't want to come to Duke? What a fabulous place. And we continue to support our student athletes at a very high level in almost everything that they need.
Hi, everyone. I am an alumna from the class of '87 and the regional director for Duke DC in Richmond. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Laura Gentile, class of '94. Laura is the executive vice president, commercial marketing of Disney Networks and ESPN. While an undergrad at Duke, Laura garnered All-America and All-ACC honors in field hockey and was a two-time team captain. Laura led Duke to their first ever appearance in the NCAA tournament and was named to the ACC's 50th anniversary field hockey team. Welcome, Laura, and a special thank you for arranging the ESPN sponsorship for the Duke Sports Business Conference in February of this year.
Hello, everybody. I want to lead with Stella because she probably has the best erg time of all of us. She's a current student at Pratt School of Engineering, and she's getting her master's degree. So she's a +1 at Duke, and just welcome. She's academic honor roll for the last 2 years, still competing, which is awesome. Next, I'm going to go to Lindsay Harding, currently an assistant coach and player development of Sacramento Kings, had a stellar WNBA career, had a stellar career at Duke, 2 Final Fours, but played for the Lynx, the Mystics, the Atlanta Dream, the Sparks, the Liberty, and the Phoenix Mercury, and also played in Turkey and Russia. So incredible professional career. Thank you, Lindsay. a good friend of mine, Prim Siripipat. We were colleagues at ESPN for a number of years. Prim was a trailblazer in creating the first all-female radio show at ESPN, partnered with Sarah Spain, and is undergoing a transition right now. She's getting her PhD at Fordham in counseling psychology. So we'll talk a little bit about that, Prim. Basically making a huge career change in the midst of being a mom and trying to balance it all. Next, Michelle Staggers, lacrosse player. It's really awesome that we have this sort of cross section of sports here, from lacrosse to tennis to basketball and rowing. Michelle graduated in 2019. She's currently the Director of Equity and Inclusion at the Virginia Episcopal School, which is a boarding school in Lynchburg, Virginia. One of many varying responsibilities at the school, she's a history teacher, a basketball and lacrosse coach, a dorm parent, and advisor to the Black Student Union. And at Duke, she helped create the United Black Athletes organization here on campus, and was a 4-year defensive starter and played under current coach Kirsten Kimmel, which every lacrosse player has played under Kirsten Kimmel in her 25-year stint. And finally, Ashley Harris Johnston, a volleyball player. She founded Weaver, Johnston, and Nelson law firm. She's a healthcare attorney out of Dallas, and was a stellar volleyball player in her own right here at Duke. So I welcome you all together for this conversation. As we said, it's the celebration of the 50 years of women's athletics at Duke. We're going to talk a little bit about your experiences, of course, and then also turn our sights to the future and what can progress look like in the future and what we can push for together as a collective. So I'm going to start with Ashley in terms of the impact that Duke Athletics had on you. You talked about playing for Jolene, and we'd love to start with you talking about the impact Duke Athletics had on you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty broad question. Almost every day that I get a question that says, when I'm talking to people and they finally realize they ask where you are, you're like, oh, you're really tall. What did you play? What sport did you play? And of course, it's, you start in this dialogue of where they finally realize where you play and they're like, oh, wow, this program and this, the Duke name and the opportunity to be able to play the D1 level is an extraordinary opportunity, especially when it comes to business and working, as a female out in corporate America. And so, you learn a lot. You overcome adversity as an athlete. You, develop a sense of resilience, the ability to have set goals and achieve those goals. And sometimes you don't always meet them. And how do you recover from those instances where you didn't meet a goal, or you didn't really strive exactly to where you wanted to be, or you met your goal and now you're like, okay, now we reset and we can go to the next level. So those types of opportunities that you get as an athlete, being on a stage, performing, and working hard to achieve those goals and those opportunities is incredible.
Yeah, in some ways, right? The losses are probably the most memorable sometimes and sting the most, but obviously that helps you later in life. Prim, I'll turn to you. I mentioned your transition from broadcasting to pursuing your PhD. Speak a little bit about that in the context of what you learned as a tennis player here.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, honestly, my transition had a lot to do with some of the struggles that I experienced just as an athlete in general. But for me, I think it was driven so much because of my personal journey, like I said, my struggles as an athlete, and particularly my transition away from sport and the identity crisis that I experienced. And I also saw just a major gap in the landscape about how we were talking about athletes, how we were treating athletes, how we were coaching and mentoring them. I think we're starting to see just a lot of conversation about mental health and viewing athletes as people first and foremost. And so, I really began this transition, I think it was in 2015. And I think you and I came back to Duke to speak back then to female student athletes here at Duke. And so that really was the beginning of my transition and trying to figure out how I could be a resource to student athletes and connecting them with the people that that could help them develop, not just athletically, but personally as well.
And it seems like there's a much greater openness to address these types of issues. And speak to that a little bit, just in terms of the athletes that come to you and how you tackle some of these issues. It's probably been very helpful that profile athletes have mentioned their own struggles.
Yeah, I think it's a slow process. Back in 2015, when I launched ESPN's sports psychology show, Inside Out, it was just too green. I think we were too early, and people were not really understanding of the significance and the importance of the topic. But as you mentioned, I think slowly and surely, other athletes have come out to talk about this, and it's becoming a much more acceptable thing to talk about. But there is still a stigma that exists. And I think a lot of networks, I think a lot of institutions, I think a lot of D1 programs are still trying to figure out how to navigate that and help athletes through just kind of all of this stuff.
Yeah, it's super complicated. Okay, great. Ideally, we can circle back in this conversation to that. Michelle, you had a huge impact on campus when you were here, beyond the playing field. But talk a little bit about the experience here and sort of the multifaceted nature of it, because I think you were, for one, a student athlete that experienced a lot of great things off the field, as I mentioned, and traveled abroad and did lots of interesting things.
Yeah, and looking back, I don't even know how I was already so open-minded just to wanting to enrich my Duke experience, but I'm really thankful and blessed in that way. I'm just, I guess I would have to go back to my recruiting process and just, lacrosse being a non-revenue sport, there's only limited full scholarships, limited partial scholarships. And so I was recruited pretty late. I was recruited my junior fall, and, we're a pretty high ranked program. So you're getting recruited freshman year, sophomore year, if you're a top recruit in the nation. And I was one of the last ones in my class. And so I actually went through the financial aid office just to try to see if I could get more aid. And because of that, I think that allowed me to already start to see myself as a student first, in a way that not many high schoolers come in doing that. And so I was taking classes that I was really interested in, and I hadn't even picked a major. I was just exploring a bunch of classes that I liked. I was able to get a part-time job even at there's an arts annex warehouse for students to use for free. And so it was an opportunity for me to dig into the arts a little bit. Lacrosse is a spring sport. And so because of that, our summers are open. And I really just took advantage of a number of programs that Duke offers to the general student body. And so when I was a freshman, it was the first year of a program that still exists today called the Rubinson Bing Civic Engagement Program, which is a collaboration between Duke and Stanford. And so there's different countries, Vietnam, India, South Africa, and you go there for a month and do some type of internship almost, but it's service learning based. And so, yeah, that opened my eyes just to see how much I really enjoyed traveling. And then I got to do Duke Engage, which anyone can do, and got to go to Rwanda for that. And I just think all those experiences really helped me to nurture my academic passions, my career passions. I remember senior year, I was in the career office, and we're going to get to things that can help student athletes at a later moment. But I remember being in that office and I was like, I think I want to go into acting in New York, or I want to, do some media. And she was like, okay, putting me in connections with a lot of people. And I ended up going into teaching, but all of those were really valuable and really helped shape me even in my current profession, in any profession that I would have gone into.
Yeah, for sure. That's something we've talked about as a group here, the panelists and I, in terms of, always remembering, right, that we're students in addition to being athletes. And sometimes the focus on our athletics, takes over a bit because it requires so much dedication and so much time, but not missing out on the incredible resources and experience across the Duke campus, which sometimes you can kind of take your eye off of that. Lindsay, I'm gonna throw to you, because you talked about some of that as well, and had just such an incredible career here at Duke. Talk a bit about, your experience, 2 Final Fours, feeling on par with the men's team and feeling like you were really in it together as a basketball program.
Yeah, I didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into when I got to Duke. I know I wanted to compete at the highest level. I have a cousin that was 2 years older than me, a student at Duke. So she was telling me, come to Duke, it's great, you'll love it. I didn't expect to go as far and be as successful as I was and as we were as a team. There was just so much. I think the biggest thing, starting with me being recruited, I saw, I've gone to different schools, and when I got to Duke, it seemed pretty fair. It seemed what the men got, the women got. I went to other campuses, the women's locker room maybe over here, and the men had the better one, or the women might have played in a smaller, uninviting or cold kind of arena, and the men had the best ones. But when I got to Duke, the locker rooms are right down the hall from each other. You played in Cameron. You traveled the same way. It seemed very fair. And when I got there, Coach K was huge. He followed the program. He talked to you every day about what you were doing. He was kind of coaching you on the side. Everyone was fully invested in Duke basketball, as well as I've talked about this before in many interviews, being the first part of the first group to have a sellout crowd at Cameron in a women's basketball game. Krzyzewskiville changed. It was all Coach G, and students camped out for us. It was 1 versus 2 versus UConn. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget actually walking out. We went as a team with pizza and hot chocolate because it was cold outside, just to thank them for coming. So being a part of something so special was amazing. Still kind of hurts we didn't get that championship. We were very, very close. I'm hoping that it's coming in the future, but it's impacted me so much. I had to grow very quickly. I came as a kid, and you're on the biggest stage of sports, and every camera's in your face. Anytime you make a mistake, you're on the front of something. Anytime you do something great, you're on the front of something. So I had to learn very quickly, and I had to grow up through my mistakes. So it's been an amazing experience there.
And as a follow-up, now working with professional basketball players at the Sacramento Kings, talk about how your experience has enabled you to just connect with these athletes, and they look at you with respect, and really you can have great communication with them on a different level.
You can walk into the gym, and I've done everything that they've done or that they want to do. I played at the high school level, praying to get a scholarship. I played at the highest level, played in Final Fours in the tournament, played professionally, and then all over the world. And they look at you and they have that respect. Earlier with Nina King talking about the one and done. It's amazing. I had a guy that I worked with for 3 years straight. He's no longer on our team, but he was a one and done coming in at 19. And then another guy on the team who's 34 with 2 children. It's kind of a different dynamic, but you kind of teach and coach differently. But it's been an amazing experience. The players, again, have so much respect, and they come to me as a former player in this situation. Coach, what would you do? How would you handle this? And that's kind of how I coach, and that's where I come from. Same with respect from my other coaches that I work with. So again, even with that, I feel very lucky and blessed that I've been put in great situations, been a part of great organizations that have supported me and, really want me a part and really want me to teach. They brought me here because I have a little bit similar experience, but a little different, and they wanted that.
Right. And it's interesting just to see how your experience has helped break down any sort of gender barriers, right? Like there's so many more women getting into coaching men. And it's less about being the female coach, and it's more about being a coach.
Yeah, we definitely have a long way to go. There's, if I had to guess, every team, you have about 4 coaches on the front of the bench. Some team behind will have 2, some will have 6. So we can say that there's easily over maybe 200, almost 250 coaches in the NBA. And as of right now, there's, I believe, 7 women that are coaching that's there. So, not every team has a woman that is coach or has ever had. I think everywhere I've been in the NBA, I've been the first. When I was with the 76ers, I was the first, Black female scout in the NBA. They never had that. I would walk into a building and they would look at me and they're like, "Are you media? Are you part of the cheer group?" I'm like, "No, my credentials are in that stack." So, you have to kind of carry yourself a certain way. And sometimes, you get asked questions. It could be a little off-putting by people who just don't know. So I've taken a lot of this time as a teaching. You can't get frustrated. You have to take the time and teach, because sometimes you're the first, sometimes no one's ever seen it being done before. And I want to make this easier for the generation behind me. I now have student athletes, young girls in high school and in college saying to me, "Hey, I want to be a coach in the NBA." And that's something I never thought about.
Right.
Like I didn't think about until I was a year or so, maybe done playing, and it just kind of happened. But they're thinking about this as careers, and now teams are really looking. They're open to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the old adage, right? If you can see it, you can be it. And it's such an important role for you to play, that people can see you doing it and they can aspire, or their kids can aspire to that.
You have to.
You have to, right? Stella, I'm going to turn to you. You're still in the thick of intercollegiate competition. Share with us a little bit of your experience and your decision to be a +1 and continue to compete as a graduate student.
Yeah, it's just been really great coming to Duke. I absolutely love it here, and I'm happy that my time isn't done yet, and that it's kind of like it sucked to have COVID and lose a season. And I can't say there was something more like heartbreaking that me and my teammates had been through after going through that. But then just kind of getting this extra opportunity to compete for one more year was like, oh, I have to do this. I guess, I don't know how much people know about rowing, but there's not really much after college. Like a lot of it for us will just like end here. So it's like, oh, I might as well like go for one more year. And then Duke just has so many fantastic graduate programs. And especially, so I'm an engineer, so I'm doing the 4+1 with Pratt. So it's just like 1 year to get my master's, but a lot of my fellow teammates have been doing the Fuqua program, which they absolutely love. It like completely caters to a ton of student athletes who want to come back. They're adjusting for practice schedules, which has been really great. It's just been really great that like Duke is helping us like keep playing and like kind of, and while getting more of an education with the rule change.
Do you know what you want to do yet as you graduate?
Yeah, I'm looking to work in material science and mechanical engineering, but still figuring it all out, I'll say.
It's the dreaded question. What are you going to do when you graduate? So I'll table that. I want to circle back to the mental health aspect of this all, because there are extraordinary pressures when you go to a school like Duke, right? Everyone around you is super competitive. Everyone around you is super accomplished and ambitious. Nan Cohan, when she was at Duke, commissioned a women's initiative, and the social environment was characterized for women as the striving for effortless perfection, which is a pretty high and impossible bar. And I know that was kind of an eye-opener to me, coming from like a public high school, just really focused on athletics, to come to Duke and feel like, oh my gosh, the bar has been raised on me, and I'm surrounded by the best of the best. I'll start with you, Prim, to just talk about how you handled the challenges as an undergrad and how that's, obviously led to your career aspirations, but how you dealt with it as an undergraduate and what tools you wish you had and perhaps we can provide for the current generation.
Yeah, I think there were some tools there, but as an 18 to 22-year-old, where mental health wasn't really a conversation, I just didn't know how to process a lot of things. we as athletes live in a very hyper masculine culture where we are kind of encouraged to push through things and power through things. So I really had to kind of retrain myself into, how do I want to live, not only as an athlete, but as a human being as well. And so I think that's where the conversation begins. I kind of mentioned about the importance of adopting a holistic approach when coaching and mentoring athletes, and recognizing that they're people first, and that no one is immune to mental health issues or any sort of struggles, especially at the college level, because it's a huge developmental period where kids are leaving home for the first time. They are confronted with this new landscape, new challenges, especially for student athletes, new academic pressures, new pressures as an athlete. And it is also the period, I think it's important to know that it's also the period where a lot of mental health symptoms and disorders will emerge. So kind of like educating ourselves about just about everything with regards to development and also mental health, I think is where we could start.
Yeah. Anyone want to add to that in terms of the pressures you felt as undergraduate athletes, and anything you wish we had provided or had at your disposal?
Yeah, I can jump in. I came in with a class of 8 of us. We had 4 to 5 walk-ons in our class, so that was a lot. By the end, when we were graduating, all of the walk-ons had left the team. It was just too much. And actually one of my teammates the year after we graduated committed suicide. And that was something where, as a team, we really had to, ask some tough questions about like, what was the mental health support lacking, not just for our team, but just in the institution. And, that teammate of mine had dealt with knee injuries for most of her career. Probably since sophomore year. And it's injuries, especially chronic ones, are a lot of ups and downs. Like I dealt with concussions for 3 years as well. And I'm pretty sure I had depression, but I wouldn't have known how to name it, nor would anyone really, unless I was talking to them, could recognize the signs. And so, it is a lot of pressure. And a lot of my teammates are so smart. They are successful, like just in terms of this mentality as female athletes that we have to have such drive in terms of our goals. It was a tough, just a few seasons, like we didn't make the NCAA tournament. And that was the first time in program history that had happened. And so just kind of all these culminating factors, just made it something where mental health, I think my coach, though she started the program, has been such an advocate for it and has made sure that the current student athletes have more resources. And so I am grateful that Duke, we have a sports psychiatrist, we have a sports psychologist, and across teams, I think there's multiple. And this is something where it's becoming a priority, which is awesome in a way it hasn't before. But unfortunately, like what it's taken to get there, just needing to be more proactive. And so I think if the school is going to go anywhere, like especially with trans women, like we have to, get ahead of the curve and make sure that in all facets for all women, we're really providing that support, and that we have female psychologists and like female counselors that student athletes can talk to as well.
Yeah, Stella, Ashley, Lindsay, anybody want to add?
Yeah. I think for me, I think of course, I know when I was at Duke, if I needed help and asked for it, I could get it. But it's that point of asking for help, knowing that you need help until you're actually kind of like spiraling. I did at one point in my Duke career, I needed to speak to a doctor, psychologist for an entire year because I was going through a lot of things personally. And that was also the year I didn't play, but I was going through a lot of things with like family, a lot of stuff. And I remember that's one thing my coach said. She's like, if you need help, you need to ask for it. That's how it was kind of presented to me. And I said, okay, I need help. And it helped me so much, helped me grow as a person, helped me just, mentally, because there's a lot of pressures on top of, I'm not even talking about basketball. This is just life. I didn't even get to the basketball part of it. And when I think about it now and like kind of reflect, now people are talking about it more. Now people are talking about mental health, like Awareness Month. We have that now. Coaches that are coaching these student athletes talk about it more. Like talk about it all the time. Like know you're not just a coach. And that's what I see and what I've seen is, oh, I'm here just to coach this sport and do this and to win because jobs matter. Like that's important. I get it. But know what's going on in their lives. Like know what's happening, because when you don't pay attention, like bad stuff happens. So, and sometimes as kids, because that's what we are. When you're 18 coming here, you don't know that you need help and you don't ask for help. And as the adult and as the coach, you need to watch over these kids as well as coach them. And sometimes you need to put the help there for them. And I think that's just taking that lead as the adult, as the coach, that these parents they give you their kid, they trust you. So like do the best that you can. So I think talking about it is a big thing. I deal with that in the NBA. I deal with that in the NBA, and I, as much as I can, try to push, talk to my athletes and try to get them the help that they need. And we do have a sports psychologist, and she's in the building. It's a she. She's in the building all the time. And I go with them. Okay, you tell me everything. We're just going to sit together. We're going to talk, and then I'm going to leave, and then you're going to do what you need to do. But it's so important because you don't want anyone slipping through the crack. And me now as a coach, I don't care if they're 30 something or they're 19 coming in. I feel a responsibility for these 15 guys, obviously on the court, but just kind of in their lives and being great. So just talk about it. It's okay.
Right.
I talk about it.
Yeah. And Prim, you could, I'm sure, validate this, but it's not people who walk around seemingly happy-go-lucky. Like people have issues, and it's not just how they show up each day. It's going to be obvious. We had DeMar DeRozan at an ESPNW event, and he's somebody you would never think, I guess, in a really sort of ignorant way. You would never think that he was suffering, and he would talk about that. Like, I make so much money. I am a star. I struggle. And again, it's helpful when people share like that, but you can't just guess at people's state of well-being. Prim, anything to pile on? And then Stella and Ashley, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I think everyone's made fantastic points. I think Lindsay made a fantastic point about the onus being on the coaches as well, to kind of take the lead, because I was a kid coming in, and I didn't know how to ask for help because I was really afraid. And I think I talk to athletes about this all the time. This is the research that I'm doing right now. There are major barriers for athletes to help-seeking behaviors because we're afraid that coaches are going to hold it against us, and that organizations, especially at the professional level or even at the collegiate level, are going to hold it against us because it might show that something's wrong. There's some sort of dysfunction. And so I think there has to be a movement towards educating coaches about how to spot some of these issues. And then when they spot some of these issues, what is the next step? Because there's a lot of the identifying the issues, but a lot of people don't know the next step. My parents didn't even know. When I started developing an eating disorder, immediately after I suffered 2 stress fractures in high school, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know where to go, who to go to. And so it's just really educating everybody because it takes a village, and really educating everybody about what the issues are and the protocol and how to handle all of these issues.
I would also add to this, what Lindsay was saying, and when she was able to communicate with her teammate or the players on her team within the women's volleyball program, and I think Jolene, my coach, is still on, but she was very open to having us come into her office and having just a dialogue about what's going on in school, what's going on in my life. And it was an open communication line that existed almost more like just, we're not here to talk about volleyball. We're not here to talk about sports. We're here to talk about you, what's going on in your life. And I remember spending, hours in their office, running with Coach Waz, just because he wanted to be able to communicate with his team better, both Jolene and Coach Waz. And those little steps that they did helped me and our team through a lot of adversity and a lot of times that I think, it was an early stage. I mean, I graduated in 2002, and I think mental health was not even on the radar at that time. And now I think that the fact that we had that in place at that level at that time is really was very impactful for me.
Yeah, I just want to add a kind of about like what's currently been going on with the Duke kind of mental health, because so my freshman year was when they first added a sports psychologist to be available to all the student athletes, which was really great. But it's also been really cool because I've gotten to see this kind of growth throughout my time here. So they started with just like one guy, his little corner office in Cameron. I have met with him. But that was it for like all 700 of us. And kind of throughout this process and him working here it's Sean Zeppelin, for anyone who knows him, over the past 4 years, he's been able to hire more staff. And like, I've seen kind of like 2 women also fill these roles as like I don't know the correct term for it, but like they're not his assistants, but they're like working with him. And it's been really great to see that as like, so my team is about 50 women. So just like having a woman be able that they can go and speak to, a lot of them found like better connections there, got a lot more out of it. Also something that I know the department is doing, and this like wasn't a thing when I was a freshman, but I'm getting to see my freshmen take advantage of this like now in this 22 year, is that they're like, okay, like you're going to meet with us like the first month of school. Like everyone has to go in for a meeting, like whether they want to or not. So they like learn about the resource right away, and it's much more accessible, and you don't have to like go and ask for the help because they already like want you to just come in. And if you want to continue, great. Like your foot is already in the door.
Thank you for that, Stella. I'm glad we have that greater capability because obviously it's critical. Mm-hmm. I want to talk to all of you too, and you can chime in at whatever point, but the notion of equality. It's awesome that Lindsay felt that when she was at school. Ashley and I talked about there's really no male corollary on campus to volleyball and field hockey. But for all of you, what more do you think Duke can do to sort of drive that sense that, the female athletes are obviously completely equal with the male athletes? We have the same resources. We have that same sense of opportunity. Share some of your ideas on that front. Because I think too, with this great group of alumni with us, obviously we can work together and make change and pursue some of these ideas.
So I also am a sport that doesn't have a male counterpart. And I think a big thing we noticed, especially in the COVID year. So also, as I mentioned before, like we're running on like a larger roster side, and we do have to like practice inside some of the time when it's cold in the winter, like we're not going out in the lake. And with COVID restrictions this past year, we weren't able to practice in a team, like as a full team in any, like there wasn't a space like inside Duke Athletics for us to practice in. That was available all the time. And like before COVID, like, yes, we did have our erg room. We made it work. But now like, with so many restrictions and like the health things, it was hard to kind of like grow and like build those connections. Cause a lot of times those land workouts are like the hard ones where you really like lean in and look at your teammates and build that trust throughout the year. And half of the team wasn't there. So I guess that's like, I think just like, I know it's available for kind of some of the teams that have that like male, female counterpart those resources, but just like they're missing a space where we all could be together was definitely hard in this past year.
As far as women's lacrosse, I think we felt pretty equal to the men's team. We used the same field, same equipment, like our uniforms were new, and we even like share the same locker room with soccer. And so it's men and women's soccer and men and women's lacrosse in the same building. I did mention that I think our team has grown and probably won't be shrinking anytime soon. And so like the numbers for our team, I think sometimes we've been in the 40s, and that's a big team. So our locker room, we've had to double up on lockers, and in a way that the men haven't. And so sometimes as freshmen, like it's 2 to a locker. And I think expanding that locker room sometime would be nice. And then I remember that there were times when certain people couldn't travel, and it just came down to, just the funds for our program. And so there were certain away games that, some of my teammates couldn't go to. And I think if someone's a part of a team, like walk on or not, they should have the full experience. And so just, continuing to be able to invest in non-revenue sports so that people that play can have the full experience.
Yeah,
I would add to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Ashley.
Sorry, I would add to that a little bit to say it's something that was just recently brought to my attention is that with volleyball, we have 12 scholarships, full scholarships, and that makes up your team. Soccer, lacrosse is very different, and they break up the scholarships. And when you're looking at tuition this next year being over $80,000 a year, you're not going to be able to get some of these kids that you want to bring in, because those families, although they may make money, they may not meet the criteria for financial aid, but they're only going to get a fourth of a scholarship or a half of a scholarship. And when you're looking at a tuition at that level, you're going to lose out on opportunities for these women that would otherwise be a perfect candidate for Duke, but they can't make the ends meet, or they don't want to come out of school with massive amounts of debt starting into their next programs. So I think obviously facilities are key and very important to have the best of the best. We all want great uniforms. We want as much as we can get. But I think that might be some aspect that is not necessarily looked at or seen, except for in the front end. And we're losing out on some opportunities for these students at Duke.
Yeah, particularly you would say on the non-revenue sports, right? I mean, you almost have to protect the non-revenue sports in a different way.
Yeah.
With endowment or what have you. Additional ideas here, in terms of driving the program forward and continuing to see progress?
Yeah, Laura, I think, kind of building off of everyone's comments, I think, we were just talking about facilities. I think it really boils down to accessibility, right? So accessibility to having the opportunity to come to Duke, having accessibility to facilities. But I think another thing, if we are pushing this forward, and I'm reflecting back on my experience as a student athlete, I really wish I had more accessibility to other female student athletes. Yeah. Because I was just really thinking about this, because the times that I had contact with other female student athletes was just kind of like happenstance. They were in the dorm, they were friends with my teammates, maybe it was in class, but there was never just kind of like an opportunity, a manufactured opportunity where I could socialize and network and kind of have that familial environment. Whereas like other programs or other universities, D1 universities, they might have like the all athlete cafeteria where we can like socialize with everybody else. And in speaking to tons of athletes and also a ton of former Duke athletes, male and female, I think there's this idea, regret's a strong word, but this wish that, hey, I wish I would have networked more. So I think it would be a great opportunity to provide those opportunities for female student athletes to interact with one another. Because as we all know, once we graduate, like it's the best family in the world, the Duke family, right? I mean, it's just going to be the family that keeps on loving. So to further enhance those relationships, I think would be awesome.
It's really true, Prim. I look back and it's like, man, I didn't go to enough tennis matches. I didn't go to enough soccer matches. I didn't go to enough lacrosse games. You just, again, you get a little myopic and you're focusing on your world, and it would have been amazing to forge those relationships. I met a teammate of yours, Vanessa Webb, more so as a graduate student than when we were competing at the same time. So I think that is something, whether it's for Nina or Win or just all of us to kind of take back, if you can kind of build those bonds across sports and we can learn from each other and almost have a sister team, in the opposite season could be pretty great. Anybody else to say anything on sort of idea front?
I have one more thing to expand on what Prim is saying and you were saying as well. I think having that like even an all athlete group, a networking component is huge, but I would also add that to the business world coming out. I mean, as female athletes, your main years of playing are in college. You may be able to play overseas for a little bit. There really aren't professional opportunities to play. You obviously have it in tennis. You have opportunities in basketball and some of these, in soccer and some other sports, but that your time at Duke is to become, the next person you're going to be in terms of going out into the world and making a difference. And if you could add in opportunities to meet with business leaders, other alums, our alums are doing incredible things, and I guarantee you they'd be willing to sit and have conversations with women athletes and men athletes that are wanting to go out and do, into corporate world, be CEO, COO, CFO, whatever. But have that so that when they do come out, there's a soft landing or warm call to be made to these other, to these alums that are interested in promoting the Duke brand.
Yeah, Ashley, that's a great point. It's a great segue. We're getting quite a lot of questions in the chat that I'm trying to sort of get to and weave in. But one is that about the transition, from being a Duke undergrad to the rest of your life. I know for me that was a big struggle. It was a sharp ending of my athletic career, and it was sort of like no looking back and really abrupt. Is that something you all can relate to? And to Ashley's point about a soft landing, what more can Duke provide to sort of help in that transition?
Well, in my time there, they did have certain networking opportunities or events maybe that they would encourage student athletes to go to. The action program, where you mentor first year student athletes, but then as upperclassmen, like you come back and be the mentor, was really key in terms of providing for first year student athletes a baseline support. But then they also continue, just some of the people in the athletic department are there in terms of the social experience of athletes and bettering it. But you're busy. Like I know it's just kind of difficult to get out of practice at 5:36. You want to eat dinner, but then there's a networking event at 7. So it's just kind of hard to go to some of these events. And I don't know, maybe if the athletic department can think of ways in which it can be more built in to mandatory things. I mean, I loved what Stella was saying about like everyone goes to see the psychologist. I think that's kind of what you were saying, but some type of where it's already in the layout of our schedule as student athletes. It's not something extracurricular, and where, again, as we were saying, it can be more tailored to women student athletes. This is for you, or Black student athletes, this is for you. But it's happening, but maybe there's a better way for the structures to be there.
And maybe there's even like a mentoring program too, like former student athletes who kind of raise their hand to say, hey, I'll help you in that first year or two. Is something to think about. Stella, you had something to add there?
Oh, yeah. Well, I kind of wanted to piggyback off of Ashley and Michelle's ideas. So I think one program that kind of does a good job with the preparation and is the CAPE program but that's only for medicine and helping, athletes who want to be doctors. But I think of all of my peers and my friends, and they have such a wide range of interests and passions that I think even a smaller group focused on, I can even use engineering as an example, helping other women engineers who are athletes kind of take that next step would be really helpful. And I think same for business and whatever. I think we have a lot of pursuits. So, but I think kind of making those small groups could really make an impact and also help build that network across teams.
Laura, I'd love to build on everybody's ideas, which I think are great. I think building something into the system would be awesome. In a perfect world, if I could create any sort of template, I think it would be awesome to have a psychologist who are credentialed to do also career counseling, but somebody who is specifically prepared to work with athletes. And so they would not only help them with the logistical transition, but also to kind of work with the emotional side. Because I mean, that was the thing that really, really caught me off guard. Logistically, I was actually like, Duke prepared me to make that transition. What I was not prepared for was like the grieving. I felt like I had lost, and I lost an identity. And maybe some of us here can kind of like relate to that. So I think if having people who are prepared and credentialed to train that career transitioning process as it relates to not just athletes, but performers experience the same thing as well. People in the military kind of experience this transition as well. I think that would be really neat to have that within the athletic department if it was like somehow built in.
That's a great idea. For me, coming from basketball, at the time I was there, coming, top recruiting class, as well as like the men, everyone thinks they're going pro, right? everyone wants to go and they think they're going to go pro, maybe not. And the mindset is that, and when I was there, the whole season goes through the whole year pretty much. And then in the summer, you will come back to go to summer school, train again, maybe you stay at home. But every summer you may not believe this, but I was the lowest ranking recruit coming in to Duke of 6. And I was hoping that I would get drafted. I didn't know. But I interned somewhere every summer. I had an interest in sports marketing. I went and found one in St. Louis and I went there. So what I see a lot from players or teammates I had at Duke, who might have graduated, who might have played 1 or 2 years, they come and they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't have anything to do. Like, all I have is basketball in school. And I was always, as I'm thinking, I don't know if they're doing this now, or it could be something put in where when students are coming for the summer to go to school, to continue to work and perform, or even at home, we have our own academic advisors there to maybe help us find these little internship opportunities to just kind of build your resume more, see what you're interested in or not, and not be so just focused on the sport. I feel when I was there, it was very much go to school basketball. And I had to do a lot on my own. And I actually leaned on my parents to help me do the other things. But I know with us and with our sport being, so long, there's definitely a lot of opportunities in the summer. And especially, like I said, when we have come back in the summer, instead of just going to school, instead of working out, maybe we find opportunities in Durham or close, just something to help.
It's a great one. Anyone else on that subject? All right, I wanted to talk a little bit about more what you do today, and what you personally strive to do to help create change. Because I know, as much as we want to change the broader national landscape and drive more media attention for women's sports and do big things, sometimes the little things matter. And being a role model in your sphere, and changing minds and hearts for the people you can touch and talk to. Can you speak a little bit to that? Michelle, I'm guessing you in an educational environment take that very seriously, but how you go about creating change on kind of a daily basis on a more local level?
Sure, yes. The school that I'm at is actually the one I graduated from. So it's a small private school in Lynchburg, Virginia. And as I said earlier, I didn't know I wanted to be a teacher. And so it's a profession that I'm learning as I'm doing it, but it's been really fun. And I know that, as a Black woman, there's just not many students even at the school that look like me. And so the position I'm in is currently a lower level administrative role. And I remember, when transitioning from a teacher to being a lower level administrator, they were just so happy for me because they were like, oh, this is great. Like, we know you're going to be able to make some change. And as we know, it's more complicated than that. But I get to work with the students just daily in terms of outside of the classroom and sports, in a boarding school setting. you kind of do it all. So there's student leadership opportunities. There is, just a community effort in terms of helping develop kids holistically. And so a lot of my work is pretty institutional, having a lens on equity and inclusion institutionally. But, my most impactful work is when I'm on the basketball court or when I'm on the lacrosse field with some of those young girls. And I know it's important that they have a Black female coach, and that we talk about things outside of sports and that we can relate to things. As young women, I'm not much older than them. And so, it's just a great opportunity to take some of the lessons that I've learned from Duke as a student athlete and to be able to share those with them before, as some of them are thinking about college and before they go to college. And especially the changing nature of college athletics. There were things that, you're not told in your recruiting process. And I'm pretty mindful of that in terms of trying to just be more open and sharing that with them so that they're not so caught off guard as to what the world of college athletics is really like. I hope that answered your question, but it's kind of layered.
More specific, like what specifically, do you try to kind of guard them against?
That college sports is a lot more business oriented than family oriented, and just wanting them to be really open in terms of, or open-minded in terms of the school they pick. That coach is the relationship you're going to have with your coach is so important. And so kind of like what Lindsay said, I just wanted to go to the best college and the best program. And I just wanted to play and win a national championship, but trying to help them think more thoroughly. And even the male student athletes, on our basketball players who most of them, in the program that we have are going to play in college. And I just try to pull in some of them and say, okay, have you thought about, what you're going to do? Yeah, I want to go play pro. Okay, well, if you don't go play pro, have you thought about some other things that you're interested in? Because in high school, you can start to build that identity, in other ways. So.
Ashley, what are some of the things that you try to do on a more local level?
I'm a little bit detached from the sports other than living vicariously through my children now and their sports. But what we try to do, I'm in a male dominated field, which I think probably everyone is at this point. But within our law firm, so I'm one of the founders of my own healthcare law firm in Dallas, and we hire a lot of women. We work with women. We allow a more flexible schedule to have working moms be able to continue working on their hours that they want to work, and they're working harder than most of our other attorneys. In that regard, that's one aspect what we do. We focus on trying to really just empower, other females in what we're doing every day. I work also with a family office, and we invest in various companies de novo, and also serve on the boards. But we really try to focus on getting a diverse board for all of our investments, because you don't want everyone to have the same mindset as you. You need different perspectives from every type of person. If you always have the same people that look exactly like me, you're not going to get a diverse look at any aspect of this business. So we really focus on doing that, having, focus on women's, one of our investments is women's health, really focusing on bringing a company that's taking care of the women for women. And so that those are kind of some of the small things we do, but there's obviously more we can always do.
Yeah, I want to say when I'm not on my soapbox with all these men, I said this earlier about kind of teaching. All of them, they've never had a woman coach them, period. The only woman that they might have had coach them is maybe their mom when they were 5. Mm-hmm. So this is like all new. Someone told me when I first started coaching, do your best, fit in, you'll be great. And I realized that was probably the worst advice because here to not fit in. I'm here to be who I am unapologetically. I'm here to be comfortable in my own skin. You can't walk into a gym having to present an entire scout to a team of all men, staff, majority, we have a couple medical people, but the rest are all men, and not have that confidence and second guess yourself. Even sometimes at the beginning, having to fake it. Now it's all real, but sometimes walking in, it could be a bit intimidating with that. But now once you do it and everyone supports you, it's great. But I think it's just important to do that. It's important to, when we see something or feel something, to say something, and really like push the boundaries. Like, I'm not here to be comfortable. I'm here to push it. I'm going to push it, and they know I am. And I think with them, as most of them as Black men have an understanding of what it feels like with inequalities. And I try to tell them, there's another level to this. There's another, now I'm a woman. And when we have conversations, it's like, I'm Black and I'm a woman. It's actually probably been harder for me to be a woman dealing with just being Black. So understand where I'm coming from when I talk to them about certain situations. But I just think always keeping your foot on the gas, always pushing the boundaries. And sometimes you just have to make people uncomfortable. Once they're uncomfortable, they start really paying attention for that. So I just say, like, teach as much as possible, because that's what I am doing a lot. Because there are things like, look, I'm around sports. There's locker room talk, as we can all say. I played it. I get it. There is. So I can't every single time be the feminist on her soapbox, right. Going, you pick and choose your battles. But it's great. I have a lot, like, just in certain, the way people think or say things. And I will come and say, hey, you said this, and it might have meant this. And they look, and they're like, oh my God, that's not what I meant at all. That's not what I thought. And they have daughters too. And they're like, okay, so they've taken a lot and they're learning. But yeah, you just have to speak your mind and be who you are.
Yeah, I think in terms of creating change at the local level, I think that began the moment I still have one foot in broadcasting, but the moment I went back to school, and I'll be in school forever, it feels like, but just getting my PhD in counseling psychology, I'm interning at a college counseling site. I have 12 clients, and sitting with them hour by hour, day by day, working through everything. And the next year I'm going to be an extern at a VA hospital, at a substance abuse rehab center. So pretty heavy stuff, but it's been quite the change going from the BDS space to that. So it's been, shifting over to the helping profession has been eye-opening, but also very fulfilling.
All right. I think I've been told, last question. So I'm going to kind of look at the, some things I'm getting from the chat and just trying to round it all up, which is there's quite a few parents on the Zoom, and looking for advice, for their children, growing up playing sports. So I'm going to put it under the guise of, what would you say to your younger self? Because I think that'll help you reflect on what you've learned, but then also obviously pay it forward to people who have parents. But when you look back and you now have taken this amazing journey and it brought you to Duke and then beyond, and you've accomplished quite a lot, what would you tell your younger self if you could give advice to, say, like your 10, 12-year-old self, reflecting on all that you've learned?
Yeah, I don't have a great one-liner, because I think it's what I was saying earlier, like what I tell my high school athletes, just to keep their eyes open and to see that there are many gifts and talents, though they may be very talented in the sport that they're playing, like just wanting them to know they can do anything and they can nurture other talents as well. And, it'll all in the end kind of pay off. Like there's so much to learn from sports that isn't even about the sport itself. And so, where my mindset was so focused on, wanting to be the best lacrosse player in the nation, like that was the goal.
Right.
But I could have had no idea what else I was going to learn just by playing this sport and just encouraging them to take every lesson and you'll apply it in life.
Awesome. Stella?
Yeah, I think I give myself two pieces of advice. I think a big one is your sport does not define you. I think there's like a lot of pressure and it's very easily like measured. So you kind of can, it's easy to tie that to self-worth in a sense, but in the grand scheme of things, it's just this amazing opportunity and you meet really cool people and you get to say you did a bunch of really cool things. And it kind of like builds your work ethic and morals for the rest of your life. So I think it's nice if your sport is everything, but it doesn't have to be, which I think is important to learn. And then also just have fun with it. Like, I think reminiscing as it's my senior year, we're wrapping things up. But my coach is like, just enjoy this. Like, this is going to be the best time of your life. Like, you're not going to find 50 other women who are going to work this hard, have the same goals as you, like ever again. At least that's what they're telling me. And so lean into it, enjoy it. So I think it's important to have fun. Like, it's easy to get caught up in the goals and the pressure of like performance, but just reminding to like enjoy the steps along the way.
Yep. Awesome. Ashley?
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of step off of that. I mean, the thing that I look at my kids and I'm watching them play sports and I just say, you're having fun. You're enjoying this. You know, take a look around and see what you're doing and enjoy where you are. This is, I think it's almost getting harder to become a student athlete. There's just so much competition out there in various sports. And so I look at it and I'm like, if I would have just said, take a look around, see where you are, enjoy it, relish in it. Think of all that you've accomplished. And, the sport doesn't define you. It does. It adds, a chapter in your life and it, provides character to you. Absolutely. But it's just the key I say, and I look at my 13-year-old who's playing volleyball is, you see the, highs and lows of those sports and you say, are you enjoying it? Are you having fun? Like, it's a sport. Like, things are going to go well, things aren't going to go well, and just enjoy it.
Awesome. And Lindsay?
I'd say there's no such thing as perfect. Your imperfections make you real, make you interesting. I'd say understand the power of positive thinking, knowing in any situation, there's always something positive out of it. I think at times we go right to negative. Oh, I wasn't good enough, as opposed to, you know what, I could do that better. If you can't find anything positive about it, then you need to walk away. Understand balance. You are like, we've talked about before, you are not your sport. That's just what you do. You're not just a student. That's just where you are. Understand who you truly are. I'm not a basketball player. I'm Lindsay, who is Lindsay. So understanding who you are and that you are far more than your sport, because that will come and go. You as a student will come and go. And another thing that was mentioned as far as being present, being in the now. If you think about things, you're always in the now, one step, then the next step, then the next step. We tend to think ahead and worry so much. We're causing ourselves to get sick on things that never even happened yet, that could possibly happen. Or we're stressing on things that happened in the past that we can't even change. What can you do right now in this moment? And just being present.
Yeah, that's along the lines of what I would say, which is you can't predict your path. And I think sometimes, especially when you're younger, you're sort of imagining some linear path that actually doesn't exist. But you feel like when you veer from that imaginary path, you're off course. And everything that we've done and everything we've achieved, it just leads you on amazing paths that you can't really predict. And so embrace that and know that you can't control everything as you progress. Prim, any final thought? We haven't gotten to you on this particular question.
I guess a couple of things would be, it's definitely not the destination. It's the journey to the destination. I'm still working on that myself. And that challenges which are sometimes synonymous with pain, is the thing that offers us opportunity and creates change. Change often comes from pain. And so when I look back at my experience, there were just a lot of things that I felt were really challenging. I was trying to find my way, fit into the team, fit into Duke. I felt like everybody was so much smarter than I was. I had imposter syndrome, but really embracing those challenges and recognizing that there's just so much opportunity and growth within those challenges is probably a couple of things that I would try to tell myself, but I wouldn't listen. I wouldn't have listened, even if I did tell myself that.
Well, thank you all. It's a need to wrap up here, unfortunately, but I feel like we could go on for probably another half hour or so, but just want to thank you all for being open and sharing and reflecting in such a deep and thoughtful way. And I just appreciate the time you've given us all. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Do you have any lasting thoughts yourself? I mean, you deserve to offer your opinion.
No, it was along the lines of, taking a deep breath and not feeling like you have to be on this predetermined path. Like, I'm going to go to Duke and then I want to go to graduate school and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that. Like, you don't know, and things change and you grow and you have new likes and dislikes. And so I think, especially younger athletes, they get kind of caught up on what they should be doing and what looks like the right thing, when in reality, you'll figure it out the more you grow and the more you get to know yourself. So have patience with yourself, I guess, as a summation.